Hello, I'm Gemma, and this summer I'll be sharing with you some of the treasures held and tales told at the Museum of Norwich at the Bridewell. The museum is in the heart of the Norwich lanes and is packed with stories of the city from the medieval to the modern day. And today it's the story of chocolate and its scrumptious place in the history of Norwich. Now, did you know that for many people an abiding memory from years ago is the delicious smell? The smell of melting chocolate wafting through the city's streets. And that smell came from here. You'll probably know this now as the Chapel Field Shopping Centre, but once this was the centre of chocolate making in the city and home of sweet treats such as Rolos, Caramac, Quality Street and lots more. The factory that once sat here closed over 20 years ago to make way for the shopping centre to be built. But if you know where to look, there are still clues about its delicious past. This is a stone roller that was used in the factory to grind the cocoa beans to make the delicious chocolate. Here at the other side entrance to the shopping mall of St Stephen's Street are these beautiful stylised stone panels celebrating the ingredients of chocolate and some of the exotic fillings which flavoured it. The next time you're out shopping, take a look up and see if you can spot them. At the height of production, the Norwich factory was turning out tons of chocolate every year. No wonder the streets had that mouth-watering smell. Rolos were first made in Norwich in 1937, were exported and sold in over 100 countries around the world, and the factory produced 2 tons of them an hour. At peak production in the 70s and early 80s, 40 million Easter eggs per year came out of that factory. That's a lot of chocolate. Norwich even gets a mention from the famous pop band The Beatles, who wrote a song about good news, chocolates which were made by Macintosh in Norwich. It was called Savoy Truffle. They sing about some of the yummy centres: cream, tangerine, coffee dessert, Montélimar, pineapple heart and cherry cream. One of my favourite objects at the Museum of Norwich is this. It's a chocolate enrobing machine and it's over 100 years old. The soft centres of chocolates would trundle down the conveyor belt into this machine and liquid chocolate would be dribbled all over them, covering or enrobing them. In this old film made inside the factory in the 1950s, you can see the chocolate enrobing machine in action. The soft centres are covered by the chocolate, and the ladies at the other end of the line would be marking patterns on top of the chocolates with little tools before they were carefully boxed up. The factory at this time was called Cayley's, and Mr. Albert Jarman Cayley is where the story of chocolate making in Norwich began. Albert, however, didn't start off as a chocolate maker, but as a chemist, opening a shop on London Street in the city centre. Soon Cayley began making lemonade and ginger beer to sell in the shop, which was snapped up in the summer months. But to make sure his workers were busy during winter, Cayley came up with the great idea to expand into cocoa production, and then in 1886 into chocolate, soon becoming one of the biggest chocolate makers in Britain. The factory also made Christmas crackers. It's said this happened as they wanted to do something with all the paper trimmings left over from the chocolate boxes which would have otherwise gone to waste. The Museum of Norwich has some lovely chocolate boxes and adverts from this time when noted artists of the day were employed to create the designs. I mentioned that Cayleys began first by making drinking chocolate, but did you know that we drank chocolate in this country way before anyone considered eating it? The Spanish first discovered chocolate in America in the 1500s, and England's first contact with cocoa was later in the 1650s, where chocolate was served as a drink in popular coffee houses. Many of these were found around the marketplace in Norwich and were alternatives to ale houses where people met, drank and discussed the hot topics of the day. It was quite an art to make the hot chocolate. A special pot was used and it was whisked up with a special stick called a molinillo. Chocolate became even more affordable in the 1730s when beans were ground, separating the nibs of the chocolate from the main bean. The nibs were crushed to produce an oil called cocoa butter, and sugar was added. And hey presto, the chocolate bar we know and love today. So that concludes our tasty tour. Has it made you fancy a little bit of chocolate? Go on, treat yourself, and look out for more treasures and tales from the Museum of Norwich.